The Brahmastra is similar to the modern nuclear weapon manipulated by atomic energy. The atomic energy works wholly on total combustibility, and so the Brahmastra also acts. It creates an intolerable heat similar to atomic radiation, but the difference is that the atomic bomb is a gross type of nuclear weapon, whereas the Brahmastra is a subtle type of weapon produced by chanting hymns. It is a different science, and in the days gone by, such science was cultivated in the land of Bharatavarsha. The subtle science of chanting hymns is also material, but it has yet to be known by the modern material scientists. Subtle material science is not spiritual, but it has a direct relationship with the spiritual method, which is still subtler. A chanter of hymns knew how to apply the weapon as well as how to retract it. That was perfect knowledge. But the son of Dronacharya, who made use of this subtle science, did not know how to retract. He applied it, being afraid of his imminent death, and thus the practice was not only improper, but also irreligious. As the son of a Brahmana, he should not have made so many mistakes. And for such gross negligence of duty, he was to be punished by the Lord himself. Text 28. Na yasyanyatamam kinchid astram pratyavakarshanam jahyastra teja unadham astragyo yastra tejasad. Translation. O Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the material science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon. Purport. For the atomic bombs, there is no counter weapon to neutralize the effects. But by subtle science, the action of a Brahmastra can be counteracted. And those who are expert in the military science in those days could counteract the Brahmastra. The son of Dronacharya did not know the art of counteracting the weapon, and therefore Arjuna was asked to counteract it by the power of his own weapon. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Vetedam Drona Putrasya Brahmamastram Pradarshitam Naivasu Veda Samharam Pranabhada Upastite Nayasyanyatamam Kinchid Astram Pratyavakarshanam Jayastra Teja Unadam Astragyo Hyastra Tejasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Know for me that this is the act of the son of Drona. He has thrown the hymns of nuclear energy, Brahmastra, and he does not know how to retract the glare. He has helplessly done this, being afraid of imminent death. O Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counteract this weapon. Since you are expert in the material science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon." Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanivadi Pastirade Shatarine. Hare Krishna. I thought for a long time what to speak on with these verses and purports. I don't want to talk about nuclear physics necessarily. First, a little bit about Drona. I'm sorry, Droni Ashwatthama. I don't want to make excuses or be like a Ashwatthama apologist, but you can have a little bit of sympathy for him. His father was killed in a not very proper way, objectively not very proper. He was made to give up fighting first by telling a lie, by someone telling a lie. And then he was killed when he was in meditation. He had given up the fight and laid down his weapons. And one of the rules of a Kshatriya is that you can never kill someone who's without weapons and who is not actually engaging in the fight. So, of course, the lying was allowed, and we even celebrated because it was ordered by Krishna. But we could also understand how Drona could be, to some degree, rightfully upset over the killing of his father, the apparently improper killing of his father. But that's not the fault. The fault is that, well, number one, in simple language, we say two wrongs don't make a right. That does not justify his heinous activities. So by ordinary morality, two wrongs don't make a right. And then there's the spiritual morality. That means that the ultimate immorality is actually going against Krishna's will. If Krishna says lie, he tells Yudhishthira, say that what was it? Ashwatthama the elephant is dead. Although objectively that's maybe a little tricky, a little underhanded, but we accept that everything Krishna says and everything Krishna does is the highest morality. Of course, an intelligent devotee doesn't want to twist this concept or misuse this concept in order to justify his own twisted or immoral activity. But in the ultimate sense, this is the highest morality, following Krishna. So Ashwatthama, whatever his justification or motivation is, he's immoral by ordinary standards of morality, and he's immoral by the ultimate immorality of opposing the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the ultimate immorality. There are other demoniac persons like this. I'll mention one other for the sake of example and comparison, and that is Kamsa. Kamsa, just like Ashwatthama, was very highly qualified by his birth, by his training, in so many ways highly qualified, but he ultimately became immoral and demonic by opposing Krishna and Krishna's devotees. And Kamsa was a similar case. He was highly qualified in many ways as a king and powerful fighter and such, and even a knower of Dharma. But because he opposed Krishna and tortured Krishna's devotees, therefore he's considered demonic. And the motivation in both of these examples of Ashwatthama and Kamsa are similar. In the 10th canto, it says that at the time of Yogamaya's appearance in the prison house of Kamsa, and Kamsa came and saw the baby and was about to kill it. And it said, Tam grihitva charanayor jatamatram swasu sutam, that he took the baby, which had just been born from its mother, he thought, and grabbed it by its foot. Apotayachchila prishte swarton muli tesoridam. And he attempted to dash that baby to death by smashing it on the stone floor of the prison house. And he did this. Why? How could he do such a horrible thing? Swarton mulita sorida. Swa arta mulita. Because of swa arta, because of thinking of himself, thinking only of himself, that my power, my position, my life, my preservation, because of that unmulita sorida, all of his any other conception of friendship or well-wishing or dealing fairly or lovingly or nicely with people, unmulita, was completely uprooted. So this is the disease, that when one is too selfish, too self-centered, only concerned with themselves, then they forget unmulita sorida. All of their sense of friendship with others is uprooted. Especially this word sorida is significant. Prabhupada said in Sanskrit, there's many different words for friends and they're used at different times. And he said, for example, the word mitra also means friend, but he said this is like a social friend. Family members or friends, because they're your family members. or some social relationship. Because of that, they're your friends. Bandhu is also friend, but this is like official friend, like some co-worker who you're not really close with or friends with, but officially you're friends, you're friendly with them. But surit means an actual, surit literally means like in the heart, a heartfelt friend. And Prabhupada specifically explained this means a friend that you're wishing well for, someone you're wishing well for because of surit, because you feel it in your heart, your friendship for this person. And of course, Krishna is Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He's the best, well-wishing friend of all living beings. So this surit, this friendship, in English, we could say this is akin to the concept of empathy. That's surit. You feel in your heart the other person's sadness and the other person's happiness. And because you can empathize with their sadness and with their happiness, therefore you treat them well and you love them and you have affection for them. But Kamsa, because of his self-centeredness, I just want to preserve myself. I just want to preserve my life. Just like it says in the Krishna book in this section. Prabhupada writes, Kamsa was so cruel that he did not listen to the pitiful prayers of his sister Devaki. He forcibly grabbed the newborn child to rebuke his sister and attempted to dash her on the stone mercilessly. This is a graphic example of a cruel demon who could sacrifice all relationships for the sake of personal gratification. But the child immediately slipped out of his hands, went up into the sky, and appeared with 8 arms as the younger sister of Vishnu. So this is the source of the cruelty of the demons, this self-centeredness that you only care about yourself, and you can't care, you can't feel affection, you can't be a well-wisher for anyone else. And just like Ashwatam, same exact thing. A couple of verses previously in the same chapter, in text 18, it said of Ashwatthama, Paradravat prana paripsu, which means Ashwatthama ran away because just to save his life. Just to save his life. Paradravat prana. Prana means your life. Literally means like your life, your breath. Paripsu. He ran away just to save his life. So he turned cowardly just to save his life, just to preserve his life. And in the next verse, the same idea, but different words are used in text 19. It's said of Ashwatthama that he ran away atma tranam. Atma also means life, just to protect his life. And also it's said of him in text 20, prana kritre, because his life was in danger. Therefore, he was so scared and so upset and so running away, and ultimately driven to perform this heinous act of letting loose the Brahmastra, and then later on trying to kill, first killing the sons of Draupadi, then letting loose the Brahmastra, then trying to destroy the entire lineage of the Pandavas. And in today's verse, the words pranabadha, out of fear of the extinction of his life, he was letting loose the Brahmastra. So this self-centeredness, this care, for myself, protect my life, protect my existence, protect my name, my fame, my glory, my position, my wealth, my sense gratification. So from this, we can understand that this selfishness, this self-centeredness, putting yourself at the center of everything, is the source of this demonic nature in all the demons. They just care about themselves. And the same idea, not so gross, not so grossly sinful or horrific as this, but in a subtle sense, the same self-centeredness, putting ourselves first, our position, our enjoyment first, is the same poison that poisons our practice and our advancement in Krishna consciousness as well. When we become too interested in prayas instead of shreyas, when we only think, oh, my life, my enjoyment, my position, this is the number one thing, and we do everything based on that. We're only concerned with our short term, and we forget the long-term benefit of Krishna consciousness, of Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam, the highest ultimate long-term benefit. We forget that. So this is some of what's at the root of Ashwatthama's horrific, sinful, demoniac behavior. Other than that, we're not, as devotees, we're not very interested in brahmastras and nuclear weapons. And Prabhupada would often mention this, that these brahmastras are just like the modern nuclear weapons, illustrating that how advanced the Vedic literatures are. But we're not very interested in brahmastras. And the Vedas in general are full of all of these sorts of things. I can't remember the exact number, but His Grace Borijan Prabhu once said that the Vedas are like 90, if I remember, like 96% all karma kandya. How to get wealth, how to get wife, how to get kingdom, how to advance to the heavenly planets, how to get sense gratification, how to control people, even things like, love potions and love mantras to get a mate, and all things like this. Material advancement is like more than 90%. Then there's a few percent, 2, 3, 4%, that is Jnana Kanda, actually discussing some philosophy, the nature of the soul, the difference between matter and spirit. That's just a few percent. And a tiny, tiny bit less than 1% is actually pure devotional service. So brahmastras, there's all sorts of other, far out and amazing and, Vedic bits of Vedic knowledges, the Vimana Shastra, how to make airplanes, and things like yoga cities and astrology and Ayurveda, and so many different things going on in the Vedic and post-Vedic literatures. But these are not very interesting to pure devotees or devotees who are aspiring to be pure devotees. Not very interested in that kind of thing. And this, of course, this concept is at the root of Vyasadev's dissatisfaction and his chastisement and instruction by his spiritual master, Srila Narada Muni, that look at these vast Vedas. It contains so much. It contains everything. But you have not focused sufficiently on devotional service. The Vedas are Nigama Kalpa Taru. They're a wish-fulfilling desire tree, a wish-fulfilling tree that will give you anything you want, but mostly these material things. So therefore, Bhagavatam is Nigama Kalpatur Galitam Plam. It's the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. We don't want all these other things from the materialistic section of the Vedas. Nigama Kalpatur Galitam Palam Sukha Mukad Amrita Drava Samhitam. It's the ripened fruit of this devotional service. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. And that fruit is even sweeter and even softer and even juicier and even more delicious because it's coming from the mouth of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Because we're receiving this fruit from the tree of Vedic knowledge from the mouth of the pure devotee that makes it even more perfect, even more relishable, and even more digestible and beneficial. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So this is the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam, that it takes the essence. We don't want to learn about how to throw brahmastras or how to, cast spells or even things, Rajasuya sacrifice or Ashwamedha sacrifice. All these things, these are kicked out. These are rejected by the pure devotees. They simply want to understand about Krishna. And for that, Srimad Bhagavatam is the most perfect Krishna Katha and the most perfect Vedic literature for that reason. And it's the best Krishna Katha, but it has other things, just like this story of Dronacharya. We could see that right after Vyasadeva was instructed by Srila Narada Muni, somehow he starts telling this story about throwing brahmastras. So what is this? Is this the Krishna Katha that we're after? This tale of brahmastras and people fighting? So how do we understand this? This is something that is also explained later on in the Bhagavatam. This is in the 16th chapter of the first canto, when the sages of Naimisharanya were hearing Sutta Goswami explain Srimad Bhagavatam, and he started telling them about how Parikshit Maharaj was touring the kingdom, and he met this personality of Kali, the personification of Kali Yuga, who was a low-class person, and he was beating a cow. And first of all, the sages were, they were surprised that such a disgusting, horrible activity was going on in Parikshit Maharaj's kingdom. And second of all, they were simply surprised. How was it that Parikshit Maharaj didn't immediately just kill him on the spot for this great sin? But they said, this is text 5 of chapter 16, Shaunika Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Sudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg? Please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. So they didn't want to simply hear some narration of a low-class man beating a cow. They had zero interest in hearing that. So they said, tell us about it if it relates to the topics of Lord Krishna. The verse says, Tat Katyatam Mahabhaga. Oh, most fortunate Sutta Goswami, tell us this katha, tell us this story. Yadi Krishna Kathashrayam. If it is Krishna Kathashrayam. We discussed last week or the week before, I think, this word ashraya. Ashraya means shelter. So only tell us this katha, only tell us this story if it's under the shelter, if it's under the banner or under the category of Krishna Katha. We don't want to hear about people throwing brahmastras. We don't like going to, like hearing some war story or watching some war movie. We're not interested in that. Or hearing about a low-class man beating a cow. The sages are not interested in hearing that. But Yadi Krishna Kathashram, if it's Krishna Katha, then tell us, explain it all to us. Let's see now in the purport, Prabhupada says, anyway, although hearing about a Shudraka, who was a cheat and insulter of a cow, was not very interesting to the great rishis, they nevertheless wanted to hear about it to see if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. They were simply interested in the topics of Lord Krishna, for anything that is dovetailed with the narration of Krishna is worth hearing. There are many topics in the Bhagavatam about sociology, politics, economics, culture affairs, etc., but all of them are in relation with Krishna, and therefore all of them are worth hearing. And the person from whom I borrowed this book, he used a highlighter and he highlighted these sentences very appropriately. Continuing with the purport, Krishna is the purifying ingredient in all matters, regardless of what they are. In the mundane world, everything is impure due to its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. So this is the understanding. In this material world, everything is matter, everything is impure and contaminated. All of the topics and movies and books and literature and people talking and joking and everything, it's all simply dull matter and impure. This is the actual composition of the material world. What's that? Vishnu Purana says Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta, that Lord Krishna has his supremely pure spiritual energy. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta, Kshetragyakya Tatak Para. Then there's the living entities, the jiva souls, who are also spiritual by nature. But avidya karma samyanya. But this material energy is simply avidya karma. It's simply ignorance and fruitive activities. Chitir Shaktir Ishite. These are, in broad categorizations, the three principal energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the nature of this material world. And if we engage in the work of this material world, the material karma, then it's of this material world, material karma, then avidya karma. It's ignorance and fruitive activities. And if we only listen to the kata of this material world, then it's avidya karma. It's all simply ignorance and fruitive activities, which will destroy our chances of eternal happiness, which will entitle us to repeated birth and death in this material world, and the repeated suffering and frustration and fruitless search for happiness in this material world, if we only focus on this material energy. But as Prabhupada says, Krishna is the purifying ingredient in all matters. In the mundane world, everything is impure due to its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. So if we add Krishna, if we understand and consciously make the link to Krishna, it's a different matter. Prabhupada in this purport, he used this word dovetailing, which we'll come back to later. So this is important. The sages, they didn't want to hear about a low-class man beating a cow. But if it's Krishna Katha, then they're enthusiastic. Tell us about it. Just like we heard about Ashwatthama. He was concerned about prana, preserving his prana, preserving his life. But the prana of the devotees is a different thing. Madchita madgata prana. Bhagavad Gita says, Madchita madgata prana, that the prana, the life, the desire and the life of the life air of the devotees is madchita madgata prana, is hearing the topics of Krishna, making sure all the topics are in relationship to Krishna. Madchita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kapayantas chamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. That their life, their prana, they're also interested in preserving their life, the devotees. But our life is supposed to be topics of Krishna, serving Krishna. Krishna Katha is our life. And tushyanti cha, unlike the topics of the material world, which end in unhappiness and death and frustration, the result of Krishna Katha is tushyanti cha ramanti cha. It gives full pleasure and it gives full satisfaction to the actual person, the spirit soul, who is himself in relationship to Krishna, Krishna's energy, and eventually in a loving personal relationship with Krishna. And therefore it gives this tushyanti cha ramanti cha, this full pleasure and full satisfaction through this process of dovetailing everything with Krishna. And if not, if you don't get that, if your prana, if your life is not madchita madgata prana, the topics of Krishna, the beautiful topics of Krishna, if this is not your life, then even if you're going through the process of, apparently the process of devotional service, you're not really reaping the fruits of it. Bhagavatam says, Dharmasranusita pumsan viswakshena katasuyat not padayad yadi ratim shrama evahi kevalam. That if you're doing your duties, but you're not developing attraction for the topics of Krishna, then those so-called duties, those important duties, are simply a waste of time. Yes, it's the duty to preserve your life and to preserve your family and to even mundane things, making a living and job and whatever. These are our duties. But if those things are not dovetailed with Krishna, and if those things are not promoting an attraction for hearing about Krishna, then that means we're doing them wrong. In that purport, let's see if I could quickly find that, of second chapter of the first canto, text 8. Yes, Dharma Swanusti Tapam. Prabhupada says in the purport, there are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conception of life. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. We discussed Kamsa's selfishness and self-centeredness and Ashwatthama's self-centeredness. So Prabhupada says the materialists, this is the position of all the materialists. Either, what did he say? Either concentrated or extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness means only yourself, only your body. And extended selfishness means, okay, not just my body, but the body of my family, or the bodies of my friends, or my community, or my nation, or my race, or my ethnic group. This is extended, but it's still selfishness. Continuing with this purport, Prabhupada says, concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. All these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and the mind. So this is how this selfishness is at the root of so much of our problem. Either extended selfishness, which is undoubtedly better than the concentrated selfishness, only my body, and to hell with everyone else. This is the business of the animal. This is the business of Ashwatthama. Let me kill everyone just to protect myself, I don't care. Or Kamsa, let me kill an innocent baby just to protect myself, I don't care. This is the lowest kind of selfishness. But even the philanthropists, the philosophers, the politicians, if they're on the bodily concept, this is simply an extended kind of selfishness. So this selfishness permeates the whole concept of material life. If you're not understanding that you're spirit soul, if you're thinking that you're some variation or combination of your body, your mind, your intelligence, and your ego, then by default, your position has to be some form of selfishness. Selfishness can actually only be transcended when you understand, number one, understand that you're spirit soul. And even that's not enough. Number two, understand that you have an eternal loving relationship with Krishna. Because those who understand themselves as spirit soul or as Brahman, they're also selfish in their pursuance of moksha. Akama sarva kama ova, moksha kama udaradi. That there's sarva kama, the materialists, and there's also moksha kama, those who are seeking liberation, are also lusty and selfish. So within our lives, the conclusion should be, as much as possible, we want to make sure we are linked, we are dovetailed with Krishna. There are some activities where that linking is inescapable. The actual literal, explicit activities of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atman, Nivedanam. When we are doing these things, it is unmistakable that it is for Krishna, and that it is for establishing ourselves as the devotee of Krishna in relationship with Krishna. We may do it with more or less purity, we may do it with more or less realization, but at least the purpose of it, the identity of it as Krishna-related activity is inescapable. Then there are other things. We need to feed ourselves, we need to live, We need to take care of our health. We need to make a living. We need to support our family. These things are a little trickier because they are not explicitly in and of themselves consciously in relationship with Krishna. We have to make an effort within our mind and within our practical life to make sure that these activities are related to Krishna. We need to take care of our health. And when we have good health, we use the energy of that good health for serving Krishna. Then your maintenance of your health is entirely related to Krishna. You have a family which you have to feed and protect and educate and serve in so many ways. And you could do it simply out of mundane duty or simply for sense gratification out of what you get from it. But if you do it, that you're preaching to them, you're serving Krishna with them. I also said a week or two ago that Prabhupada said, you do 4 things in your family. You have kirtan with the family members. You worship the deity with the family members. You hear Krishna Katha with the family members, and you honor and distribute prasad with the family members. And if you do that, then family life is no longer a material impediment, but it's fully spiritualized. So all of these things, our livelihood, we make some money. So how much are we using? Of course, some money has to be used to put a roof over our heads, to supply the necessities of life. And just like health, are we then using that life to serve Krishna? And if we have some surplus money, we can also use it in a more direct way. Give it directly to Krishna, or use it directly for the devotees, the service of the deities, the service of the devotees, the service of the temple. So in all these ways, we want to make sure that everything is very firmly linked with Krishna. And as I said, Prabhupada would very often, hundreds of times, he would use this term dovetailing. Dovetailing means like this, like the tail feathers of a dove, or like this. Or if anyone is familiar with furniture making or woodworking, there's a type of way of joining 2 pieces of wood where you cut notches out of wood and you have extended tabs out of the other piece of wood, and you fit them together like this so that they join together very securely. This is also called dovetailing. So this is how we link ourselves with Krishna, that everything is completely linked, very firmly secured with Krishna, that our life, our livelihood, our activities as far as possible, our kata is firmly linked, firmly connected with Krishna. This is from a lecture somewhat early in ISKCON, 1968 in Montreal. Srila Prabhupada said, he quoted, Nirbandham Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchite. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami says that you dovetail everything with Krishna. Then you are free. You're free. Dovetail everything. Just like here in this Krishna consciousness society, what we are doing, we are dovetailing everything in Krishna. Just like here is a dictaphone, we are using it. That's all right. But how we are using it, we are recording the talks about Krishna. This apartment, it is used for Krishna. This body is being used for Krishna. We are preparing foodstuffs for Krishna. In this way, if you develop your consciousness in touch with Krishna, that is called Krishna consciousness. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. We ensure that everything we're doing is directly, or as directly as possible, very firmly and very concretely linked with Krishna. When possible, we take up these very direct activities of Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting about Krishna, Shravanam Kirtanam, Padasevanam, directly serving the lotus feet of Krishna, Archanam, worshiping Krishna in the temple, Vandanam, offering prayers directly to Krishna, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, engaging in some menial service to Krishna, Sakyam, becoming a friend of Krishna, Atmanivedanam, and offering everything we are and everything we have to Krishna. And when we can't do it in a way that is apparently or on the surface is not so direct, then we have to make the link real nonetheless, even if it's not exactly devotional service in and of itself. Again, we're maintaining our bodily health for serving Krishna. We're raising and loving and taking care of our family for serving Krishna. Our livelihood is to facilitate our service to Krishna. All of this has to be going on. And this is dovetailing, and that is how we make our lives perfect. Long ago, my early days as a devotee, sometimes devotees would make a joke about someone that, oh, you're not dovetailing, you're crowtailing. When you try to artificially make your sense gratification Krishna conscious, when we would jokingly call that crowtailing instead of dovetailing, that you're using Krishna as a rationale for your sense gratification. So like everything in Krishna consciousness, this takes a lot of honesty. It takes a lot of introspection. It takes a lot of deep and subtle philosophical understanding and analysis. And it takes a lot of feedback. It takes a lot of feedback from our devotee friends and our devotee authorities who are our well-wishers, and from studying the Shastra, to make sure that we're actually dovetailing in a productive and a progressive way and not missing opportunities to dovetail our life with Krishna, and not misusing opportunities by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse for selfishness, as an excuse for sense gratification. We've also discussed in the past how the different anartas in Krishna consciousness, some anartas come from performance of karma, that if you do fruitive activities, that creates different anartas. If you pursue jnana, if you pursue knowledge in an improper way, that creates anartas. And then there's bhakti-unmukha anartas, that arise from the performance of devotional service. When you perform devotional service, you may get fame, you may get honor, you may get position, you may get wealth, especially if you're a little advanced, especially if you have a position, then people are going to be falling all over themselves to praise you, to serve you. And that can become an anarta, that instead of dovetailing, we're crowtailing. Oh, I'm accepting this worship. Oh, it's just for Krishna, but actually internally you're enjoying it separately from Krishna. But if, again, the point is, if done properly and very carefully, this dovetailing is the essence of it. And this is how we destroy selfishness. Every conditioned soul is selfish by nature. But when we understand our nature as a jiva, that we're naturally dovetailed with Krishna, we're connected with Krishna. And then when we dovetail all of our activities and all of our desires and all of our life with Krishna, then selfishness is automatically destroyed, automatically left far behind. And when this selfishness is gone, when this ashvatthama mentality that only me and the hell with everyone else, then we can actually work for the benefit of Krishna and for the benefit of the whole world. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. If there are any questions or comments, we can discuss now.
Thank you very much, Acarya Prabhu. That was very nice. I'm glad you spoke about that part in the beginning about Ashvatthama and kind of that backstory that I think is often forgotten. I read a post that you put up on, I think, Facebook earlier this week, I think, where you were thinking about it. And I thought it was very thought-provoking. And
the whole question of, morality and lying and trickery in the Mahabharata is a really interesting, really complex and interesting topic. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And it made me think of how a lot of things that are on the surface, or what appear, you have to actually go, to the backstory to try to understand the mentality. Even with that applies to modern day life as well. But even like with individuals like Karna, even, he's often looked at as kind of like a villain. But then when you look at his life, and you think, oh wow, he really drew a short straw there,
Yeah, and at the end of the Mahabharata, he's actually sort of, if not exactly a hero, but he gets his honor, including from the Pandavas and including from Krishna himself.
Right.
Yeah, that's a nice point. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you. I really appreciated that. You bringing that out.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Let's see if there's any other questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Malguru Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Yeah, Prabhuji, just for the comment, I don't have question. So I like very elaborately you explained about the concentrated selfishness and the extended selfishness, So we have the selfishness because we have this attachment from many births, not only this birth. So that's what, like you told for that, selfishness for ourselves, our maintaining our body, and selfish, that is concentrated, and selfishness for the attachment for the out of our body, even for the nation, for the society, for relatives, for everything, as an extended selfishness. So yeah, so it will be going only by the Harinam and by Sravanam Kirtanam. So,
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I also always found that a very interesting point, and Prabhupada brings it up a lot. That extended selfishness is also selfishness.
Yeah. Because that is not Krishna in center, just we are thinking ourselves. So yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. It's a really
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So many points. Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
Along this topic, Acharya Prabhu, of I guess the killing of the Pandav's 5 sons, Ashvatthama's actions, the Brahmastra that comes, and you can say that if all this didn't happen, then Krishna would not have saved and encountered Parikshit Maharaj within the womb.
Right.
So how can we, I guess, kind of making this relatable, when we look back on series of events that often seem horrible, like this one, and you say, well, if that didn't happen, then something Krishna conscious may not have happened. Right. And is that, can that be said as kind of Krishna's supreme arrangement? Or is it the arrangement of just the material activities, and Krishna has, in this particular case, because Krishna was personally there, you could probably say, and you can correct me, or tell us, was that Krishna's supreme arrangement that this all take place?
Right.
So is that Krishna's supreme arrangement that this?
I can't read Krishna's mind, but I would assume that, like in the Bhagavatam and Mahabharata stories, it's mostly Krishna's arrangement, just like, like Jayan Vijay falling from Vaikuntha. ultimately, it's all part of Krishna's plan. That how could a resident of Vaikuntha behave so badly? So we can understand, but also in another sense, Krishna's personal arrangement, an arrangement through the material energy, there is a point of view where you can see those as just different aspects of the same thing, because it's all Krishna's arrangement. What's that? Janmat. Anvayad iteratas charteshwa bigyaswart, that he's directly and indirectly aware of and in control of everything that's going on. So directly and indirectly, one understanding is that Krishna is directly controlling everything that's going on, and indirectly is also, things are going on by the material nature. But in any case, it's under Krishna's control. And all of these stories, there are so many layers of, what's the word I'm looking for? Layers of framing, that if you look at a pastime like this, like Drona killing the 5 sons, you could look at it just in isolation. Here's Drona killing the 5 sons. And then you could look at a broader frame that, his father was killed in this, crazy way, so therefore he's killing the 5 sons. Or you could look at a broader frame that, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, gave this direction to Yudhishthir, the most honest person, to lie, and therefore Drona was killed, and therefore Ashwatam. So everything could take larger and larger frameworks, and Krishna is the only one who can see every framing and every point of view and everyone's involvement and everyone's karma and everyone's heart all at the same time, and arrange it and integrate it all perfectly into these amazing pastimes. And not only amazing pastimes, but the amazing creation and activity of this material world, which, again, if you take a very large framework, is also for the rectification and purification and ultimate deliverance of all the living entities. So Krishna is the one who can see every framework and every point of view and everyone's heart and every situation, and arrange it all exactly, perfectly for every single person. This is Krishna. What's that? Krishna's qualities, one of them is clever. I can't remember the Sanskrit term for it, but in all the qualities of Krishna, one of them is clever. And Prabhupada says a clever person is someone who could accomplish many things simultaneously. So how clever is Krishna that he's arranging all this amazing situation, both in the Mahabharata framework and in the whole material and spiritual world framework also. Does that make any sense or shed any light on it?
No, it does. It definitely does. Very, very helpful and clear explanation.
Hare Krishna. Anything else from anyone else in Zoom land? Or another lesson we could take from this is, don't throw a Brahmastra if you can't pull it back. And I won't elaborate, but I'm sure if we spend 30 seconds thinking about that, we can think of ways that concept might be applicable to us. So any other question or comment? Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for very kindly attending and your kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Are there any announcements?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Just that we have the Sunday program this evening. Starts at 4:30. So we hope that you can all attend in person or online. One thing I will say, I just want to put that out for everyone, that in past couple weeks, people have gradually started to come into the old temple building during the program or during prasadam time to have prasadam, or just to kind of carry on, meet with people. And so understandable. Or during normal times, we would not necessarily be so strict, but we're going to restrict people from going back into the old temple building, just so that we can prevent people from going back there, taking their masks off, and potentially, getting other people sick if they're carrying something. So we realized, like, especially last week, it started to become a little bit out of control. So in order to prevent that, we just ask everybody for their cooperation during the Sunday program. I know this is a small group that is here, but just wanted to put that out there for as many people as you can get the word out to. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu, in the New Jersey, Tobacco Temple and Central Jersey Temple, they have stopped the programs actually. Sunday program, they are just doing like before,
Wow.
They were doing on Zoom, and they just they can come for prasadam, pick it up, but not attending all arti and lecture and everything. They stopped on this Sunday because of the COVID progressing so fast in New Jersey and New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're going to have to keep our eye on it. It's definitely out there, the variant. And on top of that, there's a lot of other just colds and flus that are floating out there as well. So we want to remain safe as possible. So thank you, Kaivalya Prabhu.
Right.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody. Vanchikal
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhupada. I'll go to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.